So in this episode, we're going to have a look at frequency tables. Now, frequency tables show the number of members of a sample with each data value. We can group data into classes, which can be ranges of values. So first, think of discrete data. The classes for discrete data should have gaps between the values. So for example, if you go from 0 to 9, the next group should be 10 to 19. The next group should be 20 to 29. Now this is because you can't have that's okay because you can't have a group or somebody who's aged between 9 and 10 in a discrete set of data. If you're continuous data, you need to be writing the groups using inequalities. So for example, if we've got the mass in kilograms and we want to set up some groups for that data, then you can say that the first group is greater than or equal to 0, but less than 10. The following group is greater than or equal to 10, or less than 20. The next group is greater than or equal to 20, or less than 30, etc. And each of those classes or groups will have a frequency assigned to it, which is basically how many times that class or group comes up in the data set. Now, if we've got a frequency table, and the question says how many people have a mass of 42 kilograms, well, if we've got classes that go between two values, then if we say that the group that would have 42 kilograms within it is greater than or equal to 40, but less than 50, we don't actually know how many people have 42 kilograms within that group. We just know that they're between, or they're greater than or equal to 40 and less than 50. So we actually have no way of telling how many people have 42 kilograms. Now, if the question says something like how many people are less than 10 kilograms, we can tell that because if the group if there's a group that's greater than or equal to 0 and less than 10, the question says how many people are less than 10 kilograms, we know that that class will be the frequency that we need. And in this example, we've got 5 people in that group greater than or equal to 0 and less than 10. Now you also need to know how to calculate the modal class of a group of data from a frequency table. Now the modal class is just the class that is most common. So you're looking for the class that has the highest frequency. So if you run down the frequencies, you can find out the largest number in there to find out which is the modal class. And just to recap some basic terms about statistics that you need to know. So the modal value or class in a frequency table is simply the value or class with the highest frequency. The median is the middle value, and you can work out the position of the median using the formula n plus 1 divided by 2, and where n is basically the number of values in that data set. And then you can count through the frequencies until you reach that position. Now the range is the difference between the highest and the lowest value. And when the data set is grouped, we can the range can be estimated as the difference between the highest and lowest class boundaries. And lastly, if we've got an ungrouped table, we can work out the mean by multiplying the value times by the frequency, and then add up all of those values in the value times frequency column that you've added on to the end, and divide it by the sum of the frequencies to get the mean. The sum of the frequencies is just the total number of values. So I'm going to run through that one more time. For each, this is for ungrouped data, you do the value times by the frequency, and then you add them all up for each value in your table, and you divide them by the total number of values in your frequencies. Now, if you've got grouped data, you can work out an estimate for the mean by adding a column which is the mid-interval value and another column which is the mid-interval value times by the frequency. So what mid-interval value is that if you've got a group that goes greater than or equal to 0, less than 10, the mid-interval value is simply the middle of that value, so 5. And you can do that for each one, each group or class in your data set. And that's the first column you've got to fill in. And then you times that by the frequency for each class. And that gives you an estimate for the mean, because we don't actually know where within those classes each of those values is, but we can take a guess that it's in the middle, and we hope that by averaging out over the group that it will be a decent estimate for the mean. So once you've got the mid-interval values, you times that by the frequency for each of the classes. You then add up all the mid-interval values times by the frequencies, and you divide that by the sum of the frequencies. And that gives you an estimate for the mean. Now, if you've got a frequency table and you want to find out how many people have a mass of more than 40 kilograms, well, if you've got mass in the classes and you're looking for more than 40 kilograms, you look for all of the groups that have a mass of 40 kilograms or more. So we'll take the 40 to 50, the 50 to 60, and the 60 to 70 groups. You just add up the frequency from those groups. And if we want to estimate the range for a group of data in a frequency table, we find out the difference between the very lowest value it could be and the very highest value that it could be. Now, if we want to work out the median category for the group, remember what we do is we add up all the frequencies and then we add 1 to it and halve the result. So we find out we then count through the classes until we get to that result. So which frequency do I need to get to? And then you find out, you basically say that the mean is between those two values that are at the either end of the class.